They laughed the loudest the day he started building a house around his own house. The wind carried that laughter across the open fields of Birch Hollow, thin and sharp as the first hint of winter, and Caleb Mercer heard every word without ever turning his head, his hammer rising and falling in steady rhythm, wood meeting wood with a dull, certain thud that seemed to ignore the noise of the world entirely, because some men don't build for approval, they build for what they've already seen coming. At 40, Caleb had the kind of quiet presence that didn't ask to be understood. Tall and broad-shouldered, his flannel jacket faded at the elbows, his jeans worn pale from years of work that no one had watched, his face marked not by age alone but by memory, the kind that settles behind the eyes and never quite leaves, and beside him moved Scout, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a silver-gray coat and amber eyes that missed nothing, not the shifting breeze, not the subtle drop in temperature, not the way the air seemed to tighten as if the land itself were holding its breath. While the neighbors leaned against their fences, shaking their heads and lifting their phones to capture what they called madness, Caleb worked in silence, framing a second structure around his small, weathered house, leaving a narrow gap between the outer walls and the original frame, a design that made no sense to anyone watching, a wooden shell that looked too crude to be useful and too deliberate to be accidental. Man's lost it. Someone muttered, and laughter followed like a ripple through dry grass. But Caleb didn't respond, because he had learned long ago that explanations are wasted on those who haven't felt what you felt, and Scout, instead of resting in the shade like most dogs would, paced the perimeter again and again, nose lifted toward the northern horizon, ears flicking at something distant and unseen, a low sound rumbling in his chest, not quite a growl, but not quite calm either, as if he were listening to a rhythm buried beneath the wind, something too faint for human ears but impossible for him to ignore. The sky above Birch Hollow was still clear that afternoon, pale blue stretching wide over fields that had not yet felt the bite of frost, but the air carried a dryness, a brittle edge that Caleb recognized instantly, the kind that comes before a season turns harder than expected, and as he drove the final nail into place on the outer frame, he paused for just a moment, resting his hand against the rough wood, feeling the faint chill already seeping through it, while Scout stopped pacing and stood still, staring north with an intensity that made the world feel quieter, as if everything else had stepped back to listen, and though no one else noticed it. Though the laughter still lingered in the distance, something had already begun to change, something slow and invisible, moving closer with every passing hour, because sometimes the warning doesn't come as a storm on the horizon. Sometimes it comes as a feeling in the air, a shift only the patient and the watchful ever truly understand.